Welcome to Smash Fiction, the podcast where I attempt to make a semi-coherent argument or scenario in which two or more fictional beings throw their fake bodies against each other in a battle of slapping, bullshit, and other types of shit. And also wits and strength, whatever, I don't care. We're in luck this time! I know you've all been waiting for your fix. Well, I have at least, because welcome back to space. And this week's scientific, fantastical, technological, atomic, borderline, magical battle between Spock and Mordin Solus. And the year is way in the future, set amongst the backdrop of a multi-dimensional space war that has devastated the galaxy. In the orbit of a small dwarf planet between Hoth and Dagobah sat a Rebel Alliance MC-80 starcruiser named Purity, but unofficially known as the, yeah right, lots of sex obviously happens on here, ass cruiser. Their mission?
Did you just say ass cruiser?
I did.
Okay, good.
I love you.
It's canon now.
The ass cruiser.
Their mission? Planet scan, probe, and mine the shit out of random disparate dwarf planets to find materials to make things because, as a science ship, the burden has been placed on Purity to make the coolest anti-weapon weapon to stop the multi-dimensional space war. And being a multi-dimensional space war, Mon Mothma and Admiral Akbar have recruited two of the brightest minds from other dimensions, Mordin Solus and Mr. Spock. Mordin Solus was set to serve on the Purity, while Mr. Spock was set to serve on top of the Kirk, but for some reason had issue with the wording of his assignment and decided to hack into the Alliance's system and change himself to the Purity without seeing the already currently stationed science officer. Unfortunately, the mistake was costly, because due to budget cuts and lack of a science officer, the Kirk changed from a science ship to a military cruiser overnight, and thus left the Purity with two highly competitive scientists. As hard as they could try not to, Spock and Mordin ran into disagreements constantly, not only with themselves, but also with all the Wookiees, Bothans, Mon Calamari, Twi'leks, and even a couple of the strong silent-type Rhodians on board. Of course, during one of their long, drawn-out arguments, they didn't happen to hear the loud pinging of "anomaly detected." While continuing to argue, one of their subordinates decided to take matters into his own hands, sending down a team to pick up the anomaly from the planet's surface. After being given notice that they now had boots on the ground, both Spock and Mordin watched the team's camera feed, seeing lots of dead bodies. Those don't look like rocks, but also some really super sweet element samples. They ordered the team to collect the element samples and bring them back immediately for processing. After the first week of processing, everything was going pretty well, but then nearly all of their subordinates began to act quite don't give a fuckish, not completely processing a chunk of ore here, not writing down material production there. At the second week, some crew members began to stop eating and began sleeping all day long. Okay. At the third week, some began to act out a bit violently, throwing other crew members into walls. And by the fourth week, after the 50th treatment for severe bite wounds, several severed limbs, and death by sleeping, both Spock and Mordin paged Admiral Akbar immediately, knowing something was definitely wrong. Thank you for informing me on the situation. This actually couldn't have happened at a better time because, well, as you know, we're spread quite thin, and frankly, I can't afford to keep you both here from two other dimensions. Fucking scientist. So if you would, whoever can solve this problem first and deal with the docile or enraged crew members will still have a job at the end of the day, which is a completely reasonable ultimatum in this situation. Best of luck! As that bastard Akbar signed off, both Mordin and Spock rushed to their various stations to begin work on solving the mystery of Pax. Since I have plans for these two scientists later, I, Liz Logan, am your friendly neighborhood space judge this week, seeking counsel on who best to defeat this threat. Representing Spock are Dan Mulcairn.
Yeah, long and bullshit.
And Miles Schneiderman.
Had to be me. Mordin would have gotten it wrong.
Miles, you motherfucker. You can't steal that from me.
That's why I always write multiple possible intros.
Miles?
Yes?
Miles.
Wait, was that your intro?
You can think
of it. Had to be me. Someone else could have gotten it wrong.
But you already did that for League.
I know, but it's the best. I have How can I not do that right now?
I will accept a full rendition of Scientist Salarian. That's.
I know.
Maybe I should do a new version of the role-playing Mulcairian song that I do. Maybe I can make one of arguing Mulcairian for this one.
I thought you were gonna sing. Like I had money on that.
I thought I was going to as well, but then I had to watch all this stupid Star Trek and all this stupid research, and I didn't have any time to write a song this week.
I've got another one if you want me to do another one.
No, whatever. You can leave in as much of this as you want, and that will do it.
Representing Mordin Solus are Megan Bob.
I have ruled out the possibility of artificially intelligent bullshit. Unless it's very intelligent and toying with me.
And Colin Mulcairn.
So yeah, Miles stole my thing.
It's good. Call him out. Call him out. That's right. Pistols at dawn.
And to clarify, we are only using the original timeline Spock. I had to figure out who would go first, so I sat down in front of both scientists and internally debated whether I'd rather have Spock's ears or Mordin's weird feet. In the end, I totally reached a completely fair, unbiased, and level-headed decision where Spock's appendages won out. Therefore, Spock will be going first. To infinity and beyond, or something. Space.
Your space honor. To even suggest that Mordin Solus could solve this Pax problem more efficiently or effectively than Spock would be highly illogical. Spock's mind is well-trained and unbelievably powerful. Throughout the original series, Kirk and Bones frequently call him a computer, a comparison that Spock takes as a compliment. His memory is incredible. He can instantly call to mind any fact relevant to the situation the Enterprise is in, including obscure footnotes of Earth history, from rattling off technical details of nuclear weapons to recognizing the sounds of whale song. He can do complex mathematical calculations in his head, from calculating extreme probabilities to estimating the Tribble population at 1,771,561. That's an estimate. His command of science is such that he was able to cold start the Enterprise warp drive in the naked time by combining matter and antimatter, a completely theoretical process that Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott claimed had a success probability of 10,000 to 1, and that's, quote, assuming we had a row of computers working for weeks on the right formula. This is also the episode in which Scotty, in reference to the same problem, utters the famous line, "I cannot change the laws of physics!" Fortunately, Spock apparently can change the laws of physics, because not only does he successfully achieve the cold start, he kicks the warp drive into a speed so fast that the Enterprise travels 3 days back in time. Later, in the episode Tomorrow is Yesterday, Spock devises a way to create an artificial time warp by slingshotting around a star, a process that requires ridiculously precise calculations. The method was both effective and repeatable. In Star Trek IV The Voyage Home, when Kirk realizes he needs to get his hands on a pair of extinct humpback whales, all he says is, "Mr. Spock, begin your calculations for time warp." Because that's just a thing they can do now. What I'm trying to say is, he invented time travel.
Oh, no. You did it.
Twice! No. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that Spock is just a well-constructed science machine that runs on some kind of green fuel. His capacity to think outside the box and immediately reach conclusions that are simultaneously creative, unlikely, and 100% accurate is insane. There are a wealth of examples of this from the original series, but the best one is probably the episode Devil in the Dark, which features the Enterprise crew trying to solve the mystery of a strange monster that's been killing a bunch of rare metal miners by Melf's acid melting them to death. One of the first things that happens after the crew arrives and talks to the chief of the mining operation is that Spock notices a perfectly round ball of rock in the chief's office. He asks what it is. The chief says, "It's a silicon nodule, totally worthless. They're all over the lower levels of the mine, and his men pretty much just destroy them to get them out of the way." Spock is like, "So, what if there's such a thing as a silicon-based life form?" Bones says that's fucking stupid, life is carbon-based, what's wrong with you? But of course, Spock is proven correct later in the episode when they meet the silicon-based alien known as the Horta. It's also implied that Spock pretty much instantly figured out that the silicon nodules were the Horta's eggs, but didn't say anything because he couldn't prove it. This kind of thing happens over and over and over again, with Spock's initial answers and solutions being completely borne out over the course of the story. Sorry, Captain, your buddy Gary Mitchell is becoming a god. You're gonna have to kill him. Yep, told you so. Captain, I'm pretty sure this massive spacecraft is an automated weapon that destroys planets and digests the remains for fuel. Yeah, that's totally what it is, and will you please stop trying to shoot it? I've already figured out that won't work. All the damn time.
So Spock is crazy super smart, but so is Mordin, right? So how can we figure out which of these characters has the right level of smarts to pull out a win? As it turns out, Spock's type of intelligence and level of experience makes him much more suited to pulling off this particular mission. I want to get into that, but first I want to touch on some other points. First of all, while research and invention is going to prove the backbone of this match, we can't forget that these characters are trapped on a ship with a bunch of reavers and potential reavers, and could come into physical contact at any time. Both Spock and Mordin pack long-range weapons and are adept at using them, but this is a spaceship. Most areas won't have a ton of room to move around in and stay at range. This means that Spock has a huge physical advantage over Mordin. Salarians think and move quickly, but they also die quickly. Mordin is one of the most fragile characters you can recruit in Mass Effect 2, and even with a full force field, he doesn't last long in a fight without some serious backup. Spock's Vulcan physiology gives him numerous advantages over Mordin, including superhuman strength, sufficient to bend a thick metal bar with a single blow and smash a computer monitor flat with his bare hands. He easily shrugs off blows from humans, and he can even survive several hits from a phaser. His hearing is sensitive enough to help him successfully crack a safe, meaning he won't be caught unawares. He can survive for long periods without water, food, or sleep, and needs much less air to survive than a human does, meaning he could alter the life support of the ship to render many of the non-Vulcan races unconscious, even those affected by Pax, and still function normally. The episode The Naked Time shows how critical Spock can be during an epidemic. All it takes is a single Vulcan nerve pinch and a potential threat or disease vector is suddenly unconscious. And we see in Whom Gods Destroy that he can deliver simultaneous nerve pinches with each hand. Okay, so let's talk about the types of intelligence and experience these guys possess. Mordin's experience is with the Salarian Special Tasks Group, which involves a lot of espionage and counterintelligence work. Unfortunately, this isn't a task which will require the sorts of skills you get from being a spy. There's no enemy intelligence to gather, no misinformation to sow. The Reavers aren't going to have some super science weapon that you can go in and sabotage. But don't forget that beyond the actual development of a cure, this mission requires the combatants to analyze a situation tactically and manage the people under your command intelligently and strategically. Spock is a high-ranking officer of Starfleet. He takes command of the Enterprise dozens of times over the course of the original series, and we see him as arguably a better and more efficient leader than Kirk is, probably because he spends about 80% less brain power squinting off into the distance during conversations.
Yeah, and chasing Yeoman Rand around.
Also,
in addition to off-the-charts mathematical intelligence and creative scientific logic, Spock is also an amazing tactician, able to plan and execute the most complex of schemes to perfection. We see this best in The Menagerie, when Spock's plan to reunite his totally disabled ex-captain Christopher Pike with a woman named Vila living on Talos 4 involves the following elements. Tricking Kirk into going to the station where Pike is, abducting Pike to the Enterprise via transporter, tricking Uhura and the rest of the Enterprise crew into leaving the station and heading for Talos 4 without Kirk, which is accomplished with pre-recorded tapes that not only simulate Kirk's voice, but also predict Uhura's responses. Anticipating that Kirk will follow him and get back on the Enterprise along with Commodore Mendez, manipulating his initial hearing into becoming a court-martial, manipulating Mendez into allowing the visual testimony that comes from Talos 4, and ultimately using that evidence to exonerate both himself and Kirk in the incident, while Pike is safely delivered to the surface. That's an insane number of variables to work with, and Spock pulls it off without a hitch. He's also excellent at tactical adaptation and thinking on the fly, the most famous example being, of course, the end of Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan, in which Spock sacrifices his life to save the Enterprise by repairing the radiation-flooded reactor, but not before mind-melding with Bones and transferring his consciousness, allowing himself to be resurrected later.
Oh, and speaking of the mind meld, Mordin Solus is a lot of things, but a telepath is not one of them. Whatever way he decides to gain information from the people on this ship, it will not be as efficient as Spock's method of placing his fingers against your head and reading your mind. But he doesn't even always need to do the fingers thing. There are some episodes of the original series where he just straight up reads people's minds regardless of contact. In one instance, he's even able to telepathically sense the destruction of a distant starship. It's one thing to capture a Pax victim and take the long, labored route of analyzing them medically and scientifically, plotting your way to an understanding of how their mind has been affected. It's quite another to simply be able to jump directly into their head and immediately understand what's going on. One last thing I want to touch on. This situation puts both characters in circumstances which are far from ideal. They're dealing with limited resources, with enemies attacking unexpectedly, and they're likely going to have to fix other parts of the ship if the Reavers get into the life support systems or the engines. When we see Mordin in Mass Effect, he's usually working from a pretty cushy controlled position, whether it's his clinic in Omega or his lab on board the Normandy, and he's not great at working with limited resources. He never designs anything from scratch, needing to get plans from the field first, and Shepard can't ask Mordin to develop any new piece of tech without Mordin whinging about not having enough platinum or element 0, and then it's back to probing for exotic minerals for hours on end. Spock, on the other hand, regularly improvises with laughably limited resources and is able to push them far beyond what should be possible. In fact, in The City on the Edge of Forever, a time-displaced Spock uses the technology of 1920s Earth to replicate his own 23rd century tech. He describes this act as, quote, constructing a mnemonic memory circuit using stone knives and bear skins. And when it comes to addressing problems elsewhere on the ship, let me tell you something. The only reason McCoy and Scotty even have a position on the Enterprise is because the Federation won't allow them to clone Spock. Numerous times throughout the series, Spock is shown to have more knowledge about medicine than McCoy, and more skill with engineering than Scott. Spock thrives in situations where the going is tough, but the second something goes wrong from Mordin, he'll borrow a page from Garrus and make up some excuse about needing to run some calibrations before he heads for the nearest escape pod.
Guys, I know Mordin is smart and everything, but we're talking about a guy whose brain is so powerful that it
Don't do it, Miles. I know what you're gonna do.
Oh yeah, you tell me. Oh, no. We're talking about a guy whose brain is so powerful that it was once stolen by aliens so it could run their civilization for them. And you know what else? When McCoy faltered in putting Spock's brain back inside his head, the Doctor's solution was to connect Spock's speech center so Spock could instruct him on the rest of the process. The dude essentially performed neurosurgery on his own brain. I don't care how good of a doctor Mordin thinks he is, he sure as hell ain't that good. On Spock's watch, every member of this crew will ultimately live long and prosper. Oh. With Mordin, though, well, I suppose there are always possibilities, but his chances are about as thin as Spock's eyebrows, one of which is currently raised in incredulity at the prospect of a Salarian victory.
Excellent. Let us move on to Mr. Weirdfeet, Mordin.
That's Dr. Weirdfeet.
Hey!
So, in order to unravel this mystery and solve the underlying problem, our heroes are going to need to display a wide array of different skills. But I'd argue that the first skills that are going to be tested are our competitors' interpersonal skills. If Spock and Mordin have good working relationships with the other members of their crew, then it will be way easier for those crew members to trust them and cooperate with their experiments and treatments. Also, if there end up being full Reavers on board to deal with at some point, social skills will be key for rallying survivors into a proper resistance force. So when I was replaying Mass Effect 2 in preparation for this match, I was surprised to find that I've kind of been neglecting a big element of Mordin's personality in my portrayal of him, which is that although he tends to have a cold precision about him when he's in dangerous situations, whenever it's slightly more casual circumstances, Mordin's a completely different person. He seems to smile and make more jokes more often than pretty much any other teammate in the game, with the possible exception of Garrus. And I'm not the only one who thinks that Mordin is charming as hell, cause in universe, pretty much everyone who talks about Mordin does so with a lot of warmth and reverence, most notably two specific characters who have a reputation of hating literally everyone. In Mass Effect 3, even Jack, yes, that Jack, smiles when she reminisces about Mordin and says that he had some, quote, wicked sex advice. Also, there's another person with a soft spot for Mordin who may surprise you. When you visit the space station Omega, the biggest hive of scum and villainy in the Mass Effect verse, you soon learn that it's a place with one rule: don't fuck with Aria. Aria T'Loak is the criminal queen of Omega, who runs the space station with a palladium fist. When you bring up Mordin to Aria, she, much like Jack, gets a little twinkle in her BioWare face and says that Mordin is brilliant and dangerous. This is a space station with a population of 8.7 million people, run by a woman who gives out compliments about as often as a black hole gives out light, and even she finds Mordin charming. As a matter of fact, in a film noir-style memoir audio log that you find in Mass Effect 3, Mordin goes so far as to imply that he did once break Omega's one rule, in more ways than one. Also, if you talk to Mordin frequently and aren't romantically attached to anyone else, he starts to suspect that you're interested in him, and then he gently shoots you down, saying that rebuffing the affection of people who are into something is something he has to deal with quite frequently, showing us that Dante is not the only one who wants to snuggle up alongside that weird bony body of his. Spock, on the other hand, throughout the first season of Star Trek, is liked and trusted by pretty much no one on the crew of the Enterprise. Every time he gives an order, his subordinates question it, and they frequently talk shit behind his back about what a heartless bastard he is. By the time you get to season 3 or so, he becomes good friends with Kirk, and he and Bones have like a mutual respect for one another, but it takes Spock way longer to develop a friendship with someone than we have time for in this scenario. The main reason why Spock is so off-putting is his really uneven eyeshadow application. Seriously, dude, learn to blend.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, though, the real main reason that he is off-putting is because Spock is absurdly ethnocentric, venerating his own superior Vulcan culture to the exclusion of all else. This means that he often makes kind of prejudiced, broad-sweeping statements about other groups of people, like in Galileo 7, where one of the crewmen suggests that they fight back against the natives of the planet that they're currently on. Natives who have, by the way, already killed one of their number unprovoked. And Spock responds with, "I'm frequently appalled by the low regard you Earthmen have for life." What do you mean, you Earthmen? Not cool, Spock. Also, how about this gem from the episode This Side of Paradise, where Spock says, "I've never understood the female capacity to avoid a direct answer to any question." Cool, dude. You're a real cool guy, Spock. This tendency to think of people as representatives of a group rather than as individuals, and also dismissing anyone from any group other than Vulcans, is pretty much the quickest way to alienate, pun intended, your coworkers. Spock is the worst kind of intellectual, the kind that is cold and aloof, who uses his knowledge to demonstrate superiority over others and push them away. Mordin, on the other hand, is the best kind of intellectual, a hyperactive ball of enthusiasm, who shares his knowledge and enthusiasm with others as a way of connecting to them and making their lives better.
Salarians seem similar to Vulcans on the surface. The focus, the scienciness, the low emotional response. It's deceptive, though, because Salarians do feel things, just extremely quickly. Mordin expresses sorrow at the loss of Malon, his student, regret for his own work on the genophage. He values art and religion deeply. What other aliens sing Gilbert and Sullivan? You don't catch Spock breaking into tunes from Jesus Christ Superstar. Mordin marries the best of science with the best of the arts and philosophy. While facing eradication by the Reapers, he tells Shepard, hard to imagine galaxy, too many people, faceless, statistics, easy to depersonalize. Good when doing unpleasant work. For this fight, want personal connection. Can't anthropomorphize galaxy, but can think of favorite nephew, fighting for him. He can balance those scales of the necessarily cold and analytical with the importance of the personal, and can do so openly. Spock has to work to hide his value of the personal throughout the entire series. He feels it, but expends the energy to suppress it, because it's seen as both antithetical to the ways of logic as he sees it, as well as culturally inappropriate. I'm just saying, space Puritans. Spock's emotional struggles routinely feature in the plot of the show. The Naked Time, the Menagerie, This Side of Paradise, Amok Time, Journey to Babel, The Savage Curtain, All Our Yesterdays, to name some. Spock has to work harder to be Vulcan than the Vulcans themselves because it's really embarrassing to be half human and show emotion, so he's always suppressing. With a drug like Pax in the air, dealing with emotions of those around them and in themselves is going to be a major issue. And Mordin has a firm grip on himself and a sense of perspective that Spock wrestles to find throughout the original Trek series. So, if emotion gets in the way of logic, how does it serve Spock in dealing with challenges? Spock is a brilliant thinker, but his is a methodology that carries serious consequences. In Galileo 7, Spock is flabbergasted that his own sensible actions haven't been a roaring success. He says, strange. Step by step, I have made the correct and logical decisions, and yet 2 men have died. He anticipates the enemies that they're up against will behave the way sensible creatures would. But most creatures aren't sensible. They do get off the planet, but that ain't bringing those 2 crew members back to life. If you base all your decisions on the assumption that everyone else is always going to act logically, then pretty much all of your plans are going to unravel upon first contact with the enemy. And time again, this happens to the elaborate plans that have been engineered by Spock. They always go tits up. Just think how he's going to respond when he sees his first group of Reavers. Mordin, on the other hand, is great at learning about other philosophies and manipulating others who are not like him. After killing off a group of Blue Sun's mercenaries who attacked his clinic in Omega, he displayed their bodies as a warning to the other gangs. Highly illogical, uncivilized behavior, not the sort of thing that would intimidate Mordin himself, but he knew the sorts of people he was dealing with, and this strategy worked for keeping them away. Spock treats logic as the opposite of intuition. But if intuition works, then the logical thing is to use your intuition. Mordin can use both. He's got the scientific rigor to make working results at top speed, like creating a cure for the plague on Omega, and the intuition to suss out why it's happening at all, saying no proof, but theory fits the evidence. You know what? He's right. The Vorcha are collaborating with the Collectors. And they would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for that pesky Salarian. It's going to be the same with Pax. Mordin won't think about what's logical. He'll put the pieces together and make the leap that fits the evidence, not fits what would allegedly be rational.
Now, let's break down their combat and stealth skills real quick in case they ever end up getting into a fight with the Reavers. Mordin was trained by Salarian Special Tasks Group, one of the most elite military forces in the galaxy in stealth, infiltration, ranged combat, and hand-to-hand combat. And so now he's basically a one-man army. You know how Mordin lost that one horn of his? It was in a hand-to-hand fight with a Krogan warrior from Clan Werlock, who he ended up killing with a pitchfork. The captain then offered him a chance to sit out the rest of the mission and heal up, but Mordin refused and carried on with and completed the mission at hand. Mordin has completed multiple missions deep behind enemy lines, outnumbered and outgunned, and he has had to rely on his superior training and intellect to help him survive, which it always has. Spock, on the other hand, is not typically shown being a particularly spectacular physical specimen. He fights about as well as everyone else does on the original series of Star Trek, that is to say, not particularly well. He's slow, he's awkward, and weirdly enough, despite the fact that Vulcans are supposed to be way stronger than humans, he's shown in the episode Amok Time to be basically exactly as strong as Captain Kirk, a human, when they are clashing, pushing back and forth against each other with their Vulcan axe thingies. Also, his signature move, the Vulcan Nerve Pinch, requires that he be right next to his target, and typically he only successfully pulls it off on enemies that are already distracted by something else. Do I even need to bother comparing this to Mordin's Neural Shock, which basically does the same thing from across the room, and as far as I know, Spock doesn't also have the ability to shoot fireballs or freeze people in ice. Also, energy shields! Spock doesn't have energy shields, Mordin does. I'll stop beating a dead horse at this point, but if it gets down to a fight with the Reavers, Jiminy Christmas, Spock is going to die so fast.
And speaking of sciencey things, damn it, Space Judge, Spock's a scientist, not a doctor. Dr. Spock is the guy who's like a baby whisperer. Mr. Spock is a science generalist, there to cover all the bases, which in Star Trek is a tall order, but doesn't serve him well in a contest of medical skill. His role in the crew is much more as a science advisor to the insanity around him, so he's less of an expert in specifics and more of a babysitter to a bunch of Gryffindors on an intergalactic field trip. Yes, they are all Gryffindors, except for Uhura, who's a Ravenclaw. Even Bones, who is, parentheses, damn it man, a doctor, doesn't know that much about xenobiology, and he's paid to be an actual doctor. Mordin is all about the biology and medical sciences, from his constant research and advice on how various species aboard the Normandy can make sweet, sweet space love, despite extraordinarily complicated biological differences, even allergies to one another, to his work on updating the genophage, to his meeting of Javik, a being whose species has been extinct for 50,000 years. To this last one, all you get out of him is, a Prothean, excellent. Wanna fuck a species you're allergic to? Mordin's got your back. Sudden extant species? Mordin's stoked to run tests. Gotta figure out how to make a bioweapon work against the rapidly evolving resistance of a species? Mordin's on the case. Mordin is quick to improvise in science even when he doesn't have the appropriate drugs to hand. He's a fantastic lateral thinker, able to work with what's available in order to rig together cures to ailments. When recruiting Mordin, the very first encounter you have is him standing there working through alternatives to a difficult-to-procure medicine at rapid-fire speed. And the moment he sees Shepard, he starts Sherlock-style deducing him like he's Benedict Cumberbatch, which, to be fair, he does bear a resemblance to. He also takes the genophage bioweapon and figures out how to cure it through airborne means, which is going to be damn useful when it comes to curing Pax. Why waste time delivering treatments to people individually when you can just blast it through the air supply? Easy peasy. Mordin's going to handle this within 23 hours and still have time for a full night's hour of sleep.
Great round of opening arguments. Much space. You're 10 out of space.
Your space welcome.
Space out of 10.
But frankly, it's now time to move on to the best part of our podcast, the Miranda Buttles.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Dang. That is a good butt.
Mr. Spock, take us on a tour of the ass cruiser.
Ooh.
Butts is the joke.
You guys were making a big deal out of, Mordin's ability to instantly analyze the weird biology of a Prothean. Discovering a previously unknown species like the Protheans is pretty impressive, unless your name is Spock, because discovering a previously unknown alien is the basis for almost every single episode of Star Trek.
Okay, but does he know how to let them fuck other species?
Is that what this match comes down to?
I mean,
I'm saying that is a very complex biological thing, and that getting two biologies to be compatible for any kind of sexual congress to take place is basically the hardest thing you could ask somebody to figure out.
Bob, I don't know how things work in your household, but fucking isn't that complex of a biological process.
It is if they're two completely different species.
You mean like Spock's parents?
He encounters a lot of aliens, but he doesn't really have to solve that many problems that are based around a knowledge of biology. His knowledge isn't really relevant in this kind of thing. He seems to know more about, like, astrophysics and stuff like that, and be more of a scientist generalist as opposed to knowing a lot about biology.
He theorized a silicon-based life form and found one instantly.
How is that
I'm not
relevant
impressed
to this,
by
though?
him, like, finding a thing.
I want to quickly address this thing about Mordin's social skills. So basically what you presented was a bunch of evidence that people like this guy, which is fine, that's great, it's nice to be liked. But what Spock has is leadership and diplomacy skills. You guys really enjoyed bringing up stuff from the early parts of Season 1 of Star Trek to demonstrate people kind of being insubordinate toward him and him learning how to be a leader. But the whole point of that is that he learns. When he gets later in his life, Spock is one of the Federation's premier ambassadors to other alien species and other alien nations. You know the kind of people who become diplomats and ambassadors, especially those on the highest level. I mean, in the Next Gen episode Unification, they talk about Spock like he is this legendary diplomat, this legendary ambassador. You don't get to that point unless you've overcome your previous issues with leadership. And I think leadership skills and diplomat skills are going to be more important than people liking you in this match.
First of all, at the end of Spock's life, he still has plenty of really broken relationships in his life that aren't going well, like his relationship with his parents, for instance. Picard says about him and his father, both proud, both stubborn, more alike than either of them were prepared to admit, a lifetime spent building emotional barriers. When Spock's mom is told that he has disappeared, she says, as far as I'm concerned, he disappeared a long time ago.
That's
so,
not Spock's mom, Colin. That's Sarek's second wife. That's Perrin.
Okay, well, regardless, that's still
Okay.
Spock's family. Also, the other
Family is one thing.
Okay, well, let's look at Kirk. When Spock gets court-martialed in the third season, Kirk needs to, like, rule, like, and he's like, Jim, trust me, support me. And up until the very last puzzle piece is put in place of the story, even when it's, like, 80% told, and Kirk can clearly be like, okay, there's some weird shit going on, like, he still does not get behind
Colin.
Spock up until the last thing is in place.
Colin.
He's like, he rules him guilty.
I'm not going to waste my rebuttal time convincing you of the friendship between Jim Kirk and Spock.
You have to, because he didn't support him when he was court-martialed.
I don't. You have one example of that from one episode. I have the entire rest of all of Star Trek.
You guys were talking about how warm Mordin is. What about his bedside manner? You know, you were talking about how he advises people on having sex with aliens, and you keep beating that drum a lot. But, like, the first time you sort of cement that you're going to have sex with an alien without even talking to him about it, the next thing that he says to you, he instantly launches into, like, how to safely have sex with a Turian, or how to safely have sex with a Quarian. He doesn't gently lead you into it. He immediately starts talking to you about it, which, in my mind, is a real big breach of, like, the doctor-patient relationship, you know? Like, you didn't even ask him for advice.
Is it? Or is
I
it
think
very
it just shows
efficient
that
use of time?
Yeah, I just think it shows that unlike Spock, he's not someone who's really, like, traditional and puritanical in the way that Spock is. He's just very direct and uninhibited, and because of that, he just cuts through all of the BS, and he immediately is, like, your friend and, like, a confidant to everyone, and everybody seems to treat him that way.
The reason he does that is because he knows what's going on and he knows why you're there. He's like, oh, you came to me for the sex talk. Let's go.
That response seems to me to be, like, kind of linked into what you guys were saying about how Spock is very rigid and logical and, like, doesn't use his intuition. And there are just so many examples of when that's not true.
Do you have
For
some?
example, yeah, you
Awesome.
mentioned Galileo 7, the episode where they go down to the planet surface with the giants, the quote-unquote
I know,
giants.
those were so great.
Um,
I loved it.
But at the end of that episode, when they are trying to leave orbit and they are running out of fuel and everything is breaking down, Spock takes a dramatically intuitive move, which is he shoots out the rest of their fuel in the form of a flare, and that ends up getting them saved. And that's only one example. There are numerous other times when he steps outside the bounds of logic and embraces a more intuitive approach to things. I mean, doesn't appreciate the arts? Dude, The Way to Eden. He plays a Vulcan lute. He rocks out with a hippie drum circle. All right? Don't tell me that he's bound strictly by science and logic, because he does science and logic well, but he does everything else well too.
That was when there was actually like nothing else they were going to do and they were just about to die. If on one hand you have certain death, and on the other hand you have a 1% chance of surviving if you do this crazy thing, then you do the thing that gives you the 1% chance of surviving. Spock actually gives that explanation when he's grilled by McCoy and Kirk, and it makes perfectly logical sense. It was a logical thing that he did there.
And now we move on. Mordin Solus, you have the floor.
Okay, Vulcan nerve pinch. You say that the Vulcan nerve pinch is going to be dope. First of all, there is the fact that you do have to get close to people to do it. The other thing is that relies on biology having a nerve there. Have you seen the Star Wars universe? There is some whack-ass shit out there. I do not know that you are going to be able to get a nerve pinch out of every goddamn thing. Because if you'll notice that in Devil in the Dark, he doesn't exactly do a nerve pinch on those weird blobs. Like, he only does it on very, very humanoid species.
Have you seen the aliens in Star Wars? Because, like, with the exception of maybe Hutts, they're all just dudes in rubber masks. So they're gonna have that same nerve. Like, it's said that Vulcans and humans, even though they look alike on the surface, their insides are totally, totally different, which is real convenient from a makeup standpoint, if you ask me. But if the nerve pinch affects both of them the same way, it's gonna affect a lot of stuff the same way. Most of the stuff in Star Wars.
Those are some pretty thick rubber suits. I don't know, man. I don't know if he can pinch through that.
Spock could totally take out Greedo with a nerve pinch. I guarantee it. Akbar's going down.
Stiff wind could take out Greedo.
No.
So,
Spock pinched first, damn it.
Yeah. The other thing is that you were calling into question how effective his nerve pinch is when it has to be used at close range and is sort of ideally used as a sneak attack. The thing is, we see that Spock is super good at creeping around basically silently in the episode The Menagerie when he sneaks into this Federation, I don't even know what the room is. It's like
I know. It was like a computer.
broadcasting center or something.
It's the comms room. It's the comms center.
But he like goes within, like, right next to this guy who doesn't even look up. The other thing is that Spock uses holograms defensively and to distract others. We see this in that TNG episode Unification, where, like, the Romulans come into this room, and Spock has made a holographic duplicate of the room in the room so that he can hide. He and Picard can hide, and then he has some holographic Starfleet officers distract them, allowing him to, again, come up and nerve pinch people from surprise. So yeah, he's good at that.
a lot of the stuff that you said, we kind of addressed in our opening argument, I think. Like, you talked about the inability to work with limited resources, and we talked about how he was operating that clinic, which was basically very similar to this scenario in that there's this weird, mysterious, airborne illness that's affecting people, and he kind of has this little area that he has made into a little war zone, and he's treating people, and he doesn't have all the right supplies, so he's like improvising, like, oh, do a little bit of this and mix in this other thing too, and that should get the same effect as that one drug that we don't have. And then he also figures out how to make a counter cure thing, which he then distributes and cures everybody. This is going to be way easier than that.
I disagree, because the clinic he was working from, he had been working out of for several years. So he had had time to accumulate plenty of supplies. I admit it wasn't the ideal circumstance, but it was pretty damn close to it. And the other thing is that he wouldn't have been able to distribute that cure if it wasn't for Shepard. He gave that cure to Shepard to distribute on his behalf. So he could only take that so far. Spock would have taken that cure and done it his damn self.
Yeah, remember that Spock is the guy who invented the Kobayashi Maru worst-case scenario simulation. He is the one whose mind is thinking, okay, when we get down to the worst case, like you said, when it's life or death, when it's seconds to die, or a fighting chance to live, as McCoy puts it, he is the one who is in that headspace and who will do what needs to be done to pull a victory out of his ass at the last minute. I'm not sure Mordin is equipped to do that.
So he invented the Kobayashi Maru. Do I need to list off Mordin's bibliography that you get from the Shadow Broker dossier?
That's fine. He wrote textbooks. I'm talking about
He also wrote
scenario.
classified
Research
documents
that led
for
to
STG, including threat potential analysis Turian, human, Asari, and Batarian, biological vectors and social effect, indoctrination process, and mental degradation. Those are all books or internal documents that Mordin has written.
How many times did he invent time travel?
At least 2 or 3, I'm sure.
You guys lean very heavily on his physics knowledge, as though his physics knowledge was a replacement for medical knowledge.
He has medical knowledge, too.
Okay, but you really
Need
said
I once again point out performing neurosurgery on himself?
Then why did you lean so heavily on the invented time travel? Were you hiding something?
I'm trying to tell you how smart the dude is. In case you weren't aware, Bob, he invented time travel.
All right,
Twice.
and we're done. That was really good rebuttals. Made my ass clench. People.
Our job is done.
You know it's a good rebuttal when it makes those cheeks clench.
So, presumably, after saving their ship and a brief catfight, our two science officers finally settled down for some much-needed R&R. Except that's not how it works in our podcast, and neither does this introduction. But prepare for the lightning round.
Wow.
Oh, God.
She remembered.
The lightning round is highly illogical.
Oh.
And I suspect it's about to get worse on that score.
No. It's different. It's not so bad.
Can you hear me raising one of my eyebrows right now? Because I'm doing
Well, you'll see. Okay, here we go. While floating in the nothingness of space, Spock is gazing thoughtfully out the portside window, while Mordin is in the back singing and contemplating the aforementioned weirdness of his feet. The ship suddenly takes a jarring turn and begins hurtling into what Spock can only call a black hole of utter chaos. As Mordin calculates their trajectory, the name of their destination pops up on screen saying, Terminus Spacis Judgiest? As the two science officers brace themselves against the hyperspeed, their ship is suddenly stopped, and a voice reverberates through their chamber. Welcome to my domain. It's been a while since I have had two similar to you in my clutches. What I did with your forebears was a silly thing, though, and I can see that the two of you think yourselves smart. Ha! We shall see. In fact, we really will, because you two have to prove it to me. I am the space judge. Ha! I will.
So you now have a self-insert character in this?
Yes.
All right, that is all.
Oh God, I'm so happy.
I will give you each the three same problems that I, the space judge, have been experiencing lately. And even though I, of course, am smart enough to solve them, I want to get your professional opinion as well, because why not? For each problem, tell me your idea for an invention or a logical thought process that will work to fix it. And give me a name if you have one, because I like names. Number 1. My pet Randy, the baby Rancor, keeps lifting up my goddamn toilet seat and getting in. And he chews on my favorite shag rug. How can I get him to stop? Number 2.
Yes.
When cooking, how do I truly choose between plomeek broth and tummy-tingling tachanka sauce? Number 3. How on earth, I mean on space, do I keep these damn kids off my space moisture farm? Since Mr. Spock went first, in this lightningest of lightning rounds, Mordin Solus will be going first.
So, I understand that your Rancor is lifting toilet seats and chewing on your shag rug. The first thing that you need to do is you need to give it something to do, so that way it's not going to get into other things. So, I really recommend getting it like a chew toy. So, something flavored like, probably I would go with Kamasi, because they're pacifists. And so, like, yeah, it's imbued with some of their nature. I grant you, is it humane to do that? No. But if it gets your Rancor to fucking stop drinking out of the toilet, then you do what you have to do. So, yeah, I mean, it's made from their distilled essence, and then they just sort of chew on it, and it's really, like, it's rock hard. And so they have to work at it, and they get a little bit of it, and does it have a little bit of kind of heroin effects? Yeah, it does a little bit. Is it going to be addicted? Maybe a little bit. But what price piece, I ask you.
Yeah. Also, giving them the occasional Twillick dancer when like as a reward for good behavior can be very good, but you got to watch out because they're pretty high in fat. It goes like straight to their hips. Also, you're gonna need to like clear away all the little bones from their area because they have a tendency to like get stuck in their teeth and they can't close their mouths. You just got to clean up after them. Get rid of all the hazards and stuff.
They will eat them, and because you think that they can digest them, but they can't actually digest them. They just love to eat them anyway. You also need a replacement behavior. I suggest like clawing intruders' legs. So whenever it starts going for the toilet, give it an intruder and say claw, and then it's like, oh, okay, I'll stop drinking out of the toilet.
Just a handy intruder.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to have some on hand, but you do what you do.
That could help get rid of the kids on your lawn, actually. You could fix one problem with the other.
Oh, because he'll love that, because then something to chase.
So, in terms of the soup, I mean, it depends on, I guess, how good the plomic soup is. The way you really need to tell is you throw it against a wall and you see if it sticks. So, if it does, in fact, then it's good stuff. If it doesn't, then I would say, go straight for the, skip right over that and go for the tachanka sauce.
If you're tasting it and it's too salty, what you can do to actually remove some of the salt from it, the space salt, is you can put a potato in there, or a space potato, into it, and it will suck up some of the salt out of it, so that way you don't have to have as much sodium in it.
Another thing I can suggest, I don't know exactly of a way to get rid of the children on your lawn, but I could engineer a virus to make sure that the people in the neighborhood don't have any more children. So I think this generation you might be screwed.
Shit.
A generation from now, I think your problem will work itself out.
It'll be fine.
Oh my god. Such great options. Thank you, my dear advisor. Mr. Spock, what do you have for me?
Well, first of all, I'm actually kind of on board with Team Mordin's idea of a chew toy for the Rancor. However, their idea isn't that great, frankly, and it's kind of vague and not fleshed out. They don't have a marketing plan exactly. Whereas Spock, in true Star Trek Gene Roddenberry tradition, has come up with a product that he wants to make money on, and has begun shamelessly promoting it on his television show. And this is the Chewbacca, aka Chewie, chew toy. Which Rancors just really get into. It's very furry. It makes a little cute little noise. I can't do it, but other people can. It makes a little noise when you chew on. Yeah, there you go. That's what it does. And it's flying off the shelves right now. If you don't get one, then other Rancor owners are going to really look down on you.
Shit.
That's a fascinating hypothesis, Mr. Miles. My approach to the subject is slightly different. I would say, Space Judge, that your Rancor appears to be exhibiting behaviors closer to a Dagobah scrange, which is a large aquatic creature from the swamp world. My guess is that it's trying to get to water and thinks that your rug is the moss that grows on the ground in Dagobah and is trying to eat it mistakenly. I would recommend creating a swamp-like habitat to better suit its unique biology.
I'll have to call my friend Kit about that. Thank you.
Yes.
As far as the cooking question goes, I mean, there's no accounting for taste, but I do think that the tachanka sauce is often described as tummy tingling, which I think can often be a problem with more sensitive stomachs. The trick to plomic soup is having a really pretty nurse with a low-cut skirt serve it to you. So if you can get that element going on, then I think that'll really help you make the decision. But, the problem with plomic is that it's often described as very bland and kind of tasteless. Like, I don't know, Spock usually hates it, but they've done something kind of recently with it to make it a little more palatable and to be prepared faster, which now plomic soup is plo-microwavable.
Oh!
So you can actually heat it up really fast, and it brings out the flavors, makes it much less bland and more tasteful.
Moreover, plomic soup is made by and intended for Vulcans, and is therefore the logical epitome of soup. Tachanka sauce is made by and intended for Krogans, who have numerous redundant organs and live on a world where dinosaurs regularly attempt to eat them. It is only logical to choose the soup that will not kill you with space diarrhea.
And in terms of the kids getting off your lawn, Space Judge.
Space before any word makes it funny. And if it's like an already funny word like diarrhea, you're just done.
Oh, can you imagine how horrible space diarrhea would be if you were in 0G? Okay.
So, in terms of getting the kids off your lawn, look, I'm Spock. I have access to a lot of people who have two qualities about them. A, they're old people who used to be famous, and B, they fucking love talking about themselves. I don't know if you've heard William Shatner's most recent one-man show, but good God, does it go on forever, because the man loves talking about himself. You know what's a surefire way to get kids out of any area? Bring out the old folks and have them be super friendly and try to be cool with the young ones and talk about all the things they used to do back in the day. Yeah, those kids are gonna be gone.
There are a number of potential alternatives for this one. One is, of course, you could attempt to lure the children away by planting sound-producing devices at various points throughout your neighborhood, which play the Leonard Nimoy song, The Ballad of Bilbo Baggins, which is
Don't you dare!
which is sure to bring any children laughing and skipping towards the source of the noise. However, I must wax philosophical for a moment and say that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. And the children are the many, and you are the one. I think you may have to come to grips with your new lifestyle and or throw yourself into a Starship reactor and die from radiation poisoning.
I don't care for that thought process. I am the only one that matters. Thank you very much, Space Judge. Fuck you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Dan, I'm not sure about your tactic on that one. Not sure where that was going.
It's a Hail Mary.
There was no
you know?
tactics involved. It was just logic.
Fair enough.
Man.
Oh, logic!
Dan is
I'm running away! Ah!
Okay, I guess that's the end of the lightning round.
That is the end of the lightning round.
So, did you guys have a favorite episode?
Of Star Trek?
Yeah. Or one that you were like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe my eyes saw this.
Oh. I really like the Enterprise incident.
That
I
one
like
was
that one
good.
too.
It was.
Yeah.
I just
really
love Spock seducing like the Vulcan lady. I thought that was
You like
amazing.
the finger sex?
Yeah,
the
right?
finger
How they
sex.
like make out by just like pressing their hands together. So
Yeah.
hot.
It was.
I was telling Dan about this when I first watched it, but the Galileo 7 episode, it fucking killed me. How the opening is, we're the Enterprise and we have to deliver these medical supplies. But first we're gonna stop and look at this quasar.
I know, I
Yeah.
wondered that. And then he says
the other guy's
quasar,
like-
and quasar-like phenomenon.
Yeah, and the other guy's like,
Quasar and quasar
there's
accessories.
A plague. There's a plague on this colony. Can we get to the plague? And he's like, no, I have a standing order to investigate shit that will totally be here on our way back.
See, my experience was a little different. I decided to play a drinking game where anytime Kirk would break eye contact during a conversation and just sort of like do the 1,000-yard stare in a random direction, I would take a shot, and now I am dead.
Was it worth
I
it?
gotta say though, I really loved This Side of Paradise. If we're talking about favorite episodes,
Yeah.
the one with the spores, I thought that was great.
That bit at the end where Spock says it was the only time in his life he's been happy.
I
You're
know!
like, Jesus, dude, come on.
And,
Pick
like,
up
watching
a hobby.
Nimoy-
Do some musical theater. Come on.
Watching Nimoy get to act, in a different way, like you could tell he was having a lot of fun.
Well, what's your favorite, Bob?
You know what? I will be very honest. They blended together so very quickly for me. The first one I watched was The Naked Time, and I couldn't believe I was seeing it. It felt surreal,
so
so
good.
I was kind of like, so I kept like looking at Neil and going, and with the face of like, oh my God, look at this. Are you seeing this thing? I guess that one, but I'm trying to think. Oh,
What, like, did you have that reaction because you loved it, or because you hated it, or because you found it just inscrutable? Like, what was your thing?
I had heard tell of Star Trek, and like I'd never seen an original episode before. So it was just like, I don't know, like being on an alien planet, I guess.
One kind of interesting thing about that episode is apparently, like in the original script, they were going to have Sulu doing like martial arts, like, karate or something, running around. And then George Takei suggested, he said, hey, since this is like, centuries later and cultures have theoretically like integrated a whole lot, could we maybe have Sulu doing something from a different culture? Could he do fencing? And then he said, as like a way of showing like, just because he's like Japanese doesn't mean he has to do like a Japanese martial art. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then the weird thing is in the Star Trek movie, what martial art do you know or whatever? And he says that he knows fencing. And then his sword is a katana instead. And so it was like weirdly a step backwards. In,
That was like the
later,
first movie, right?
the reboot movie.
The motion picture. Oh,
Yes,
the reboot
Sulu-
movie.
God.
Yeah.
JJ
in the
Abrams
reboot movie,
shits on everything.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
really does.
Go
That's not
die
true.
in a fucking fire, JJ Abrams.
What does he
Hey,
not shit
Force
on, Dan?
Awakens.
Star
Force
Wars?
Awakens.
Yeah.
All right, that's legit.
I don't know. I'm still
Alias?
fired at.
Well, y'all will be pleased to learn that our second match featuring a Mass Effect character was still not enough to get me to play Mass Effect. So,
Aw.
We'll break
it?
you one day, Schneiderman.
Space Judge!
The Spudge returns.
As usual, I feel like you just gotta say this. Oh, you both did such a great job. Haha. Such a great job.
Thank
Can you
you.
make that a little more dismissive, please?
Your characters are very smart, talented, youngish looking men. Whatever you want to put in alien terms. Yeah, they're both very smart. I think Spock did a really good job of selling me on Spock's innate strength and advantage in close quarters combat within the ship. And, you did rely on the time travel thing, which I didn't quite understand, but, Mordin is a specialist in biology, and he's got a lot of experience in that. Yes, Spock uses his intuition. Yes, he was in a hippie drum circle. That's cool.
So cool.
Mordin is amicable and charming. And taking all that together and considering the scenario, I think having more experience with dealing with crew members and biological systems will give Mordin the edge.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I was so nervous.
Con!
You guys did really great.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I
you
was
guys
terrified.
earned it.
You guys were
Totally
awesome.
100% earned it. I just hate
Oh.
you is all. That's fine.
No,
I was
just, like-
so scared the whole time because I was like, oh shit.
Me too. You guys,
Okay.
I was.
Shit.
But I do
Yeah.
need to say something. Team Spock, you made me laugh so fucking hard in the lightning round. You won that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
If
That's
nothing else, we can at least do that.
for me, Liz. Winning one of your lightning rounds is like a bigger victory
Yeah, right?
than winning the main round. Colin, I'm glad that you got your win for Mordin.
I'm very glad to
Which-
hear. This is a very
which, of
important one
course,
for me. Yeah.
Leaves Sterling Archer as the only league character to have lost his smash
And
fiction
might I
match.
point out, the only league character whose player advocated against him.
Yup.
Maybe that's why.
Let's
Did I miss it?
I can't.
So I'm going to start with kind of general thanks on Tumblr. Thank you to Mr. Man 334 and Jeep Rhyme for reblogging some Hermione versus Willow. We got a lot of reblogs for that, but we also got a lot of reblogs and chatter about our Disney episode, our Disney Valentine's episode. Apparently, people like the singing. Don't encourage us.
Oh,
So-
man. Oh, man.
Really? So I should sing every week, is what you're saying?
No.
Because that's happening now.
Thank you to Gameable, Law and Disorder Podcast, Cosplay Fiend, Florian, Addis Boy, Emlyn625, glad to see you back, Jeffrey Ketchum, and Neil Butler. Okay, so we got some fun stuff. First of all, for the fun stuff, Grayson Leal and Cosplay Fiend have started like a meme war based on Smash Fiction and Most Extraordinary League, and it is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. When this comes out, they did start a meme war.
Yes, we should point out we do record these episodes several weeks in advance, so
So it might be crazy by now.
it's very current as of when we are recording it. Like, it really just started picking up some serious steam as of now, but
So, yeah.
keep it up, you guys. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's so fu- like yeah, when two Smash Fig fans fight, all the Smash Fig fans win.
Yep.
Apparently. Also, Grayson, he tweeted at us about so Screen Junkies does like a little bit of a poll thing, and one of their polls was, what movie character would you most want with you on Purge night? Now, they had like a choice of 3, which were kind of lame, but if I get to pick, I'm gonna say Godzilla. Who would y'all pick on
What were the
Purge
choices?
night? Oh, the choices that they gave were Gandalf, Tarzan, and Bronson. I mean,
What?
obviously Gandalf from that group. All
I picked Furiosa.
Yeah, Furios is a good answer.
Euros is a good one. What movie character would you most want with you on Purge night, Liz?
Myself.
You're not
You're not a movie character.
yet.
It doesn't.
All right, time to cheat. God
Fucking
from
John
Dogma.
Wick! I'd want John Wick!
That is the current.
Also
that
that.
is the current fave. I
Eddie
suppose.
Nicolas Cage.
John Wick.
Oh yes.
I picked John Wick, the role-playing game designer.
Also, Sky, on our fan Sky, speaks to us through Twitter. Asked if League has an emblem, which it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. But, I mean, if anyone out there wants to start submitting ideas, you know.
If anyone guest hosting this podcast for the second time in a row wants to come up with any ideas, then
I can make one. I'll cook one up for you guys.
Finally, on Facebook, a fun little question. Randy Kendrick wants to know what our favorite episodes have been.
Oh,
And
shit.
I fucking saw this one coming and didn't think about it. Fuck, hold
Good
on.
job.
oh man, I
Maybe
have
the
a list.
Smash Bash? I don't know.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah,
That's
I think the
probably
Smash Bash is
it.
my favorite. Although the first cage match is still really special to me.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like all the cage matches.
I really like it anytime Gameable's on. I really liked the Frankenfurter versus Jarrett the Goblin King episode.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I really like our April Fool's Day episode, even though it might only be funny if you know me and Dan as people, but I think it's just great.
I liked my Blizzard villain lightning round.
Oh, yes.
Just
that
the
was...
lightning round, though.
Emo
was
high
a good
school
episode.
Arthas, just really, that was great.
Oh, mine's the No Face and Homer and Kirby one. I've re-listened to
the
it
eating
multiple
contest?
times because Liz does that voice, does the Carney voice at the beginning, and sometimes I'll just listen to the intro and then just rewind it to like.
I don't remember. What did I do?
You did this ridiculous Carnival Barker
And then
voice
you're
at
like-
the beginning of that episode.
And then
Oh,
you
God,
said the
yeah.
phrase "Long Island iced boat," and I fucking lost my shit every time. Because you say it like you have only been told that this exists, and so you say it with this kind of wonderment, but in a Carney voice, so you're like, the Long Island iced boat! It's fucking amazing. Oh my god.
All right. Well, speaking of favorite episodes, we have a new iTunes review. This comes to us from Crandy23, who gives us 5 stars, and the title of the review is I love these guys. So I never give a review for anything, let alone a podcast, but this group is so amazing that I just have to. First off, if you have not listened to Smash Fiction, you absolutely have to. From having the most well-informed and intelligent and funniest people, and I should point out, he put intelligent in quotes.
That's correct. That is
Yeah,
correct. Yeah.
fair.
Like that's 100%
Fair.
accurate.
Legit.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Correct.
Along with being the absolute best at bullshitting. While listening, it feels like you are right there and you can feel just how much fun they have. And then he signs off with a nice long Doom!
Beautiful.
But then he comes back in with some PSs. PS, I have to add, even though Liz and Miles are my favorite, Colin's lightning round in Cyborg versus Inspector Gadget versus RoboCop is my absolute favorite moment.
Oh,
Well, that is a super close tie with Slenderman versus Candyman lightning round, which I feel like I need to claim credit for.
Yeah. No,
Oh,
no,
yeah, Dan.
I'm sorry. I will take the credit for that one. Thank you very much.
Again, just love everything about you guys. And then he says, PSS, I thoroughly enjoy and think each one of you guys are amazing and would like to buy all you guys a drink. So, if we're ever in your neck of the woods, Crandy23, then we will gladly take you up on that offer.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I would love
That's
to see
awesome.
you guys at cons one day.
Someday that'll happen.
Someday.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Smash Fiction. Next week, we have Wolverine versus the 3 super predators, the Berserker, the Falconer, and the Tracker.
Smash Fiction is produced by Miles Schneiderman and production assistant Sharon Holden, with logo design by Colin Mulcairn.
Special thanks to Kevin McLeod of the Clan McLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme song, Hitman.
You can find us on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast and search for the Smash Fiction Podcast on Facebook, Tumblr, and YouTube.
subscribe on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice, and if you leave us a good review, we shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or other contributions, send them to us at smashfictionpodcast@gmail.com and help us continue the fight.
I thought I heard on the wind someone say Miranda's butt.
Yes, of course I did. Hello.
It's okay, Kit. Her butt is very easy to find on the internet. I will show you.
the Miranda Buttles round.
Okay, I feel better. All right. Show me later, Dad.
I can show you the world.
Shining
On the
shimmering,
ass cruiser,
splendid.
okay?
Shining, shimmering, peach-shaped.
Ooh,
On
so
the ass,
peachy.
the ass.
All right,
Those
anyway.
hexagons.
Anyway.
Her ass cheeks
On the
are
ass.
a little bit like lifted and separated, which I'm like, that's. I feel like her. Never mind.
Oh
We're not
my
gonna
God.
go there.
Okay, so we have.
Hey, Miles, you should play Mass Effect.
So we have.
Wow,
a few-
Liz, that is a tremendous butt.
I want to see.
You've seen that butt.
You got the
I
text.
always want to see it again.
You know,
I don't blame you.
The premise behind a seance is that if a bunch of people focus their psychic energy on one thing, they can bring it into being. So I think if we all look at a picture of
No,
Miranda's butt.
Wait. But is it going to appear in the middle of all of our locations?
Okay, so listeners,
It's worthless stuff.
the day after this drops at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, everyone look up a picture of Miranda's butt, and we're gonna see if we can bring this thing into being.
Okay, that's not, no.